I just thought that day, okay, the parade's beginning now. This will be the vice presidential nominee audition bench.
It's just Trump alone being debased by a porn star. In the greatest moments of indignity for a former president of the United States in all of our history. There he sat alone, and it was pointed out. And because it was in the media, Trump saw it, he read it, and he reacted to it. He complained about it. The rage boiled up, and then the people showed up. It is Tuesday, May the 14th, 2024, and there are 175 days remaining until the American people decide who sits behind the Resolute desk in the Oval Office. This is the warning. There is new polling in the presidential race from the New York Times and Siena College. Like most New York Times polls, there are problems, but this one shows what has consistently been true throughout 2024, which is if the election were held tomorrow, Donald Trump would be returned to political power in the United States. There is something that must be said 175 days before the election, before it is too late. And it's this: Joe Biden's presidential campaign must change course. It must confront Donald Trump in a new way, because something is obvious from the polling. The coalition that elected Barack Obama to the presidency is gone. It no longer exists. It has fallen apart, as has the coalition that elected President Biden, which was much thinner, much less steady and sturdy than that Obama coalition. It too is gone. It has evaporated in 3.5 years' time. President Biden is losing support among Blacks, Hispanics, young people. The result of all of this is that Donald Trump's coalition, which is a combination of MAGA intensity, fanaticism, plus indifference, is leading in the race. There's another factor too. The Biden campaign is simply overwhelmed by a deluge of lies that are injected on a moment-to-moment basis into the American media and spread all around the world before the Biden team can even react. I'm going to show you a perfect example from Wildwood, New Jersey this weekend. Here's how a lie starts. And this one came from one of America's most incompetent and dishonest political reporters, the Associated Press's Steve Peoples. Steve Peoples was famous during the Romney campaign for being the most unpopular reporter on the campaign plane among his peers. Snarky, mean, dishonest. Steve Peoples. He's also lazy. He's the type of reporter that is spoon-fed. He's the type of reporter that plays for access. He'll write what you want him to write so long as the payoff comes soon. He just doesn't want to work very hard. He wants to be given the information, he puts it out on the wire, and soon whatever it is that he writes is all around the world. A county official in Wildwood, New Jersey, one person, without context, without proof, asserted that Donald Trump's crowd was between 80 to 100,000 people strong. It would be an immense and historic gathering on the Jersey Shore. The problem with the AP story that reported this fact is it's not true. There were not 80,000 people at a Donald Trump rally in Wildwood, New Jersey, nor were there 100,000, nor was there any number between 80 and 100,000. Maybe there was 10 to 15,000. Here is what a crowd of 80,000 people looks like at an NFL stadium. Here's what Madison, Wisconsin looked like in October of 2004 when Bruce Springsteen came to campaign with John Kerry. I remember being on the Bush campaign, watching this on television. And the words I thought to myself in that moment were, holy shit, we're going to lose. That's 80,000 people. Because of Steve Peoples' laziness, this lie spreads all around the world. And the focus is on the immensity of the crowd size, not the insanity they poured out of Donald Trump's mouth. Let's listen to Trump talk about the late, great Hannibal Lecter.
Silence of the Lambs. Has anyone ever seen a Silence of the Lambs? The late, great Hannibal Lecter is a wonderful man. He oftentimes would have a friend for dinner. Remember the last scene? Excuse me, I'm about to have a friend for dinner as this poor doctor walked by. I'm about to have a friend for dinner, but Hannibal Lecter, congratulations, the late, great Hannibal Lecter.
My friends, there are two major wars going on in the world. There is a war in Europe being waged by the Russian Federation against Ukraine that has killed more than 500,000 Russians. That means they are all in. The Polish president has volunteered to base nuclear weapons in Poland as a deterrent against Russian invasion that most Polish leaders think is coming. The Polish president recently advised the younger generation of Poles who have grown up in peace to prepare for war. He was sad when he broke the news to them, preparing them for what's next. Estonia, Lithuania, Latvia, all of these countries understand that they are under Russian threat. They understand that the military umbrella that the NATO alliance has provided as part of the most effective military alliance in world history could be going away. Donald Trump has invited Vladimir Putin to attack our friends, our allies, our NATO partners, the world's democracies. Hannibal Lecter. Incredibly, the New York Times, the paper of record, didn't report the matter. As Jonathan Last from the Bulwark points out, here's the front page of the New York Times. Where is the story of Donald Trump ranting and raving about Hannibal Lecter? Between, of course, threatening to lock up political opponents, deploy the United States military. Oh, Joe Kahn, the executive editor of the paper, doesn't think any of this is news. We are careening towards disaster in America, and we're getting there in a hurry. Are you curious at all about the causality of how things happen around Donald Trump? There's another wonderful case study about how the media plays a role in the Trump campaign. There's been a lot of mockery about the lonely Don sitting in the courtroom without family, without support. Where's Melania? There's been hundreds of headlines. It's been pointed out time and time again. Where is Uday? Where is Kusei? Don Jr. and Eric. Where are the supporters? Where are the protesters? It's just Trump alone being debased by a porn star in the greatest moments of indignity for a former president of the United States in all of our history. There he sat alone, and it was pointed out. And because it was in the media, Trump saw it, he read it, and he reacted to it. He complained about it. The rage boiled up, and the people showed up. First, there was Rick Scott. Now, Rick Scott is the only member of the United States Senate as the CEO who was found guilty of Medicare fraud running his company. He might like the feel of a courtroom. He can empathize with Donald Trump. But it didn't stop there.
I just thought that day, okay, the parade's beginning now. This will be the vice presidential nominee audition bench, which is right behind the Eric Trump bench. And as soon as they got to the first break, as soon as there was the first recess of the morning, the senators disappeared, and that row became completely empty once again.
Then the boys came, Uday and Kusei, to glare at Michael Cohen. But then the VP candidates started to show up. J.D. Vance, who's been quite clear on the record that he doesn't believe in American democracy. He says the country needs a Caesar. It needs a man like Trump.
What's going on inside that courtroom is a threat to American democracy, ladies and gentlemen. We cannot have a country where you get to prosecute your political opponents instead of persuading voters. Joe Biden's entire strategy is to try to distract from inflation at home and war overseas with this sham trial. I just want to live in a reasonable country where we try to persuade voters in our politics. We don't try to throw our political opponents in jail. So this is a disgrace, and I wanted to be here to show some support for my friend.
Understand this. J.D. Vance will never do what Mike Pence did, because J.D. Vance has been explicit. He doesn't believe in the American Constitution. J.D. Vance believes in Donald Trump. J.D. Vance looks at Hungary and says, we have to do it Orban's way. J.D. Vance isn't a Republican. J.D. Vance is a fascist. And if people like Joe Kahn at the New York Times understood their history better, were more literate about the events of the 20th century, were less sheltered and cloistered, they would understand that. And they would be able to communicate as a public service, as a public interest, what the free media should be able to communicate without fear or favor that fascism is rising. And fascism kills liberty, it kills freedom. Why is it that the New York Times and much of the media believe that neutrality and indifference towards the brutality of fascism is somehow journalistic fairness? That ignoring the realities that the nation could face obliteration is somehow the idea that everything floats equally and neutrally at a 50-yard line, where there is no right, there is no wrong, everything is relative, is nonsensical. Yet it is the prevailing view around Donald Trump, the most vile man to ever be president of the United States. But it is not his vileness that disqualifies him. Though his character is loathsome, it is his commitment to the destruction of American liberty, the Constitution, that matters. And that is what so many people are blind to. They just can't see it coming. And now the Speaker of the House of Representatives will come to a Manhattan courtroom to show his support for a criminal defendant, debasing his office also. What they are all saying is, it does not matter. We are with Trump forever. And that's a scary thing in the third decade of the 21st century. And while Donald Trump is ranting and raving about Hannibal Lecter, and the Associated Press was lying about his crowd size, and that information was racing around the world, and the New York Times and other newspapers were refusing to cover any of it, the Vice President of the United States decided to get a little salty with her language.
Sometimes people will open the door for you and leave it open. Sometimes they won't. And then you need to kick that door down. Excuse my language.
Word on the street is the vice president doesn't take kindly when people give her advice about her performance. Let me just say, this is unsatisfactory at a Sarah Palin level. The cackle, the profanity, the vice president does not convey here like a serious person at all. And the problem is that she's part of a ticket running with an 82-year-old who's losing an election to a fascist. And there are serious concerns, according to the polls and a lot of the electorate, about her capacity and competency to be commander-in-chief. And this doesn't help. A few weeks back, you saw the whole national press corps in the room with President Biden. Appreciate this evening for what it is. It is ground zero, the epicenter for that one night of the most out of touch spot from reality in all of America, maybe on all of planet Earth. They cheer, they clap. Every person in that room was wrong about Donald Trump's ability to win in 2016. And almost every one of them in that room is dead wrong about believing that Donald Trump can't win in 2024. Donald Trump is winning. He is in his strongest position at this point 175 days out than he has ever been. During the next 175 days, Donald Trump will require and demand constant confrontation. Yet, Biden campaign can't get its hands around refuting his crowd size, which is bogus. It should be retracted by the Associated Press because it's made up. During the next 175 days, the American people will have plenty of time to focus on a monumental decision. That decision will reverberate over the next generation here and around the world. Understand this. If Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin together are the leaders of the world's most heavily armed nuclear powers again, the rules of everything will be rewritten. History will take its next turn. And God, will it be tragic. We can stop it. The reality is that Joe Biden is a deeply flawed candidate. There are 175 days to go. And when somebody is asking you for the nuclear weapons keys, maybe it's appropriate to ask a question or two about why they're talking about Hannibal Lecter in Wildwood, New Jersey, at a rally for a campaign for President of the United States. I'm Steve Schmidt. This is The Warning, and I invite you to subscribe on our Substack, on our YouTube channel. Follow us. Welcome to the community.